did you think about the president's speech last night?
Well, I thought that the president did a good job of characterizing the successes that we've had in the first year, which are really historic. I think that since we arrived at inauguration, we've all felt like we're on fast forward. And I can say that I've had almost no days off. I've been in here almost every day, helping to achieve the agenda of the president and serve the American people. And looking back at all the things that we've done in terms of reducing inflation, making income growth go up, reducing murder rates, making the border secure, that it's really quite an astonishing set of things. I think that he also did an excellent job of not resting on his laurels. He didn't say, "Oh, I did all this great stuff, and so therefore, you guys should vote for Republicans in the midterms." Instead, he said, "I'm going to do this other stuff now." So for example, he mentioned that about half of Americans don't have an employer who gives them a retirement account with matching, a 401k. And President Trump announced that he's, and his team, our team, has figured out a way to have a 401k account that's modeled after what government workers get with matching for low-income people, so they can start to save and benefit from the stock market too. So I thought it was a very uplifting speech. I had a lot of tears in my eyes at the appropriate moments. They did a great job of finding people with incredible stories. But I think it was probably the best State of the Union address I've ever seen.
With the retirement accounts, is this going to be modeled after TSP
Exactly.
or FERS or TSP?
It'll be modeled after TSP.
And up to $1,000?
Yeah,
matching?
So what it is that there's an existing program which basically previous administrations, Democratic administrations, have been unable to sort of really stand up. That because we set up the Trump accounts, we now have the expertise so that we can do this for, create a thrift savings plan, 401k, for every low-income person. And there's actually previous legislation that allows a match up to $1,000 for low-income people. And so by combining our newfound expertise at creating accounts and this existing program, then we can actually start seeding the programs almost right away. It starts in 2027.
So you can do this in-house right now. It doesn't need legislation.
That's right. But our hope is going to be there's going to be a step 2 where people see how good this program is, and then they have legislation to expand it.
Okay. Talking about the Trump accounts, walk us through that, because I think last night may have been the first time a lot of Americans heard about that. They can go to a specific website, is that right, and learn all about it? Tell us about it.
Right. So basically what President Trump wants to do is that whenever a child is born anywhere in the U.S., then they get a Trump account with money put in the Trump account, and they then are like themselves part of the capitalist system. They own capital. They've got a stake in the game. And what we did in the Big Beautiful Bill is we expanded the idea of Trump accounts to include children. And so for children, some even up to 18, but for children 18 and under, we made the accounts for everybody, but we didn't throw the money in all those accounts. But we put in a special condition that charities can put money in people's accounts. And so you saw the president announce that Michael Dell, who's had a very successful business, has announced that he's going to put $6.5 billion into the accounts of people 10 and under. And we expect there's going to be a heck of a lot more of that. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if by the 4th of July, other rich people around the country and charities around the country will contribute perhaps as much as $1 trillion into these accounts, which is going to fundamentally change, I think, the outlook on life for so many kids who grow up without parents that have the money they need to set up a good savings account for them.
And you just answered, what my next question was going to be is, what kind of change could this mean to someone's life, having this money available to them?
Right, well, there's a whole literature on what happens once you have an account like that, because you study it. You think about, if it's going up, you're happy. Why did it go up? If it's going down, you're unhappy. Why did it go down? And we think that it basically just helps create a better environment for citizens to recognize how the success of America can feed through to their success. And probably in the end, that'll affect votes too. So if somebody comes in and does something that really torpedoes your account, then they'll probably be less popular in the next election.
Let's talk about the economic picture. What does it look like right now compared to when President Trump took office?
Well, I think that the economy's booming. The last 3 quarters, we averaged 3.2%, and President Trump last time promised that we would have 3% growth. And you might recall that when he promised it, we had people like Larry Summers and liberal economists say, that's impossible, you could never get 3% growth. Well, we had a negative quarter is Joe Biden's last quarter last year, and then on average, the 3 quarters after that were 3% growth, which is what President Trump promised. President Trump makes promises and he delivers, and I think that's really the message of the data.
So in my real life, I've seen some prices go down. Eggs over the weekend when I picked up a dozen, it was $2.66.
As opposed to $12 at peak.
Right, and last night I paid $2.75 for a gallon of gas.
Wow.
Which is not that bad for Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
we live in a high-cost area. So, with that said, not everyone feels that they've seen prices come down enough where they feel like there's been relief. What do you tell folks like that?
Right. Well, first we understand why they feel that way, because what happened under Biden, right, is that prices went up about 22%. So the cost of everything went up by 22%. And so let's just say that you had an income of $50,000 and you tended to eat your income because you don't have much room for savings if you have an income of $50,000. Well, then the normal stuff you bought went up by 22%. So that means that it costs $10,000 more. So unless you got an increase in your salary of $10,000, you're worse off. And that's why Americans were so unhappy about what inflation did to them. Inflation affected virtually every American, and I think it's one reason why President Trump won a landslide, is because people were so upset about what had happened to their economic circumstances. What's happening now is that because we're bringing the jobs back, we're having factories built with the Big Beautiful Bill, giving special tax incentives to do that. We're increasing people's take-home pay with no tax on tips and no tax on overtimes. We're seeing that incomes are going up faster than prices now. And last year, the average person saw their income go up by $1,400 after adjusting for inflation. So we're making ground up. But we haven't made up all the ground yet because Joe Biden dug such a big hole.
Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger delivered the rebuttal, the Democrats' rebuttal to the State of the Union address. And she talked about affordability, she talked about the economy. She said the president has failed on making life more affordable. She asked the question, do you think the president is making life more affordable for you and your family? And she said, we all know the answer is no. Those are her words.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
My reaction to the governor is just one of profound disappointment that when she ran for governor, I used to live in Virginia, Vienna, Virginia. She seemed kind of like a nice, normal Virginian that would be a good governor. And then the minute she got elected, she became AOC. And she's willing to lie about economic statistics, defame the president at every chance, make the state a sanctuary state so that we can't protect our citizens and so on. And so I'm just very, very disappointed in the governor. I can't imagine how duplicitous she's been and what Virginia voters must feel about that. I got to say that I didn't watch the speech because I couldn't bear to. Because after looking what she said on the campaign, I knew what she was going to say in her response, and it was going to be 180 degrees different from what she campaigned on, and I just didn't have the patience for that.
And
so we know that we don't know what she believes. We know that she believes what it takes to win an election.
And she talked about affordability. What do you make about Democratic elected officials like her and those in her party who are now talking about affordability? It's a word they're using quite a bit, but as we know in Richmond, her colleagues in the legislature, by our count, introduced more than 50 plus tax increases. We know the governor wants to rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which will be, as Governor Youngkin called it, a tax on your electricity bill, driving up electricity costs. What do you make about, and right now session is going on in Richmond, so lawmakers are still hashing out the budget. So we'll see what they pass and send to her desk, but what do you make of that? We're talking about affordability, but then her party introducing tax increase after tax increase.
Right, well, not only tax increases, but regulation increases and stupid policies. You and I talked about eggs. When I came into the White House, eggs were $12 a dozen. I went to the grocery store here in DC and they were about $3. You said you did a little better than that. But egg prices went down. But if you go back and look at why egg prices went up so much, it was because the Democrats were in panic over avian flu and they killed all the chickens. So whenever a chicken had a sneeze, then they killed every chicken for 20 miles. Hundreds of millions of chickens were killed, and if you don't have chickens, you don't have eggs, and so the price went through the roof. And so what we did with President Trump, and this is just a microcosm of what we're doing and how we're fixing the terrible harm that the Democrats have given us, what we did is we went in with veterinarians and everything and came up with a better plan than just killing all the chickens, and that's why egg prices are back down. And the point is that we're doing that across the board, and President Trump talked a lot about the prices of things that are going down, and we're laser focused on that. But in the end, the bottom line is if you spend like a drunken sailor, which the Democrats did, you're going to have inflation. It's like Econ 101. And we reduced the deficit $600 billion last year. That's why real wages are up and affordability is headed in the right direction.
Well, after all those years of inflation, high inflation, inflation like I haven't seen in my lifetime, I was just wondering, how could anybody reduce inflation and lower costs? It seems like a tough task.
We're doing
it. This is why you're in this position, right? To figure that all out. So how do you do it?
No, that's what we've been doing. Is we're taking the really stupid Democratic policies like killing all the chickens, and we've stopped doing that. We've got better ways to keep them safe from avian flu. We're enforcing the law. So one of the things when we came in that everybody talked about was how grocery stores and drugstores were losing about 4% of their sales to theft. And we're leaning on states to enforce the law and stop that. There's been a heck of a lot of cargo theft under Joe Biden. So we would load goods in off of ships and put them on trains, and then cartels would go in and steal the stuff off the trains. We've got law enforcement people looking after that, and we're deregulating like crazy. And things that are really, really costly regs are being wiped every day.
Housing is another issue that a lot of people in this area are grappling with. There's a lot of young families who feel like they'll never be able to afford a house in Virginia or even Maryland or DC. There are people in Northern Virginia and around Maryland, but especially Northern Virginia, who are feeling like they're going to have to leave the area. Now that's partly a local issue because local supervisors are increasing taxes on them, right? But at a national level, what do you think needs to be done to make it more attainable for someone to get into a house, to be able to afford that?
This is one of the highest priorities for this year for the president, and he gave a glimpse of what we're doing, but it's really just a glimpse because we have an ongoing housing task force that's going through thing by thing to see what we can do to make it more affordable for young people, especially first-time home buyers, to get into a home. We're pleased with the fact that already in the first term we've cut the typical annual mortgage payment by about $4,000 with our deregulatory policies, but there's lots more to come. And the president announced in the State of the Union last night that we're going to stop the practice of having big institutional investors buy up everybody's homes and then rent them at high prices. And so we've noticed in some cities like Atlanta, did you know that in Atlanta about 20% of homes have been bought by institutional investors, and then they're taking that and using the market power from that to drive up rents? It's something that we're ending. We ended it with an EO. And so now if you want to, if you and I are competing for a home, then it's a level playing field. It's like you'll bid, I'll bid, one of us will win. But the playing field was very unlevel under Joe Biden because you would go to try to buy a home and you'd have a big Wall Street firm bidding against you, and we stopped that.
Yeah, we covered a bill in Virginia, actually, that a local lawmaker introduced, a state senator, to ban that practice, having large investment firms coming in and purchasing up the housing stock and maybe flipping the homes or just sitting on them.
Or just sitting on them.
Or renting them. So in order to get that done, is that something that would take an act of Congress at the national level?
No, we have an executive order, and we believe that we've got an airtight case to stop it. We think it's going to stop. Secretary Bessent and I just finalized the rules of what an institutional investor is, and we expect to begin enforcing it right away.
So rulemaking?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I think you covered just about everything.